So right now we have part 2 of the Napoleonic Wars. Our part 2 to their part 2. Understand?
Napoleonic.
Hope you do.
While the Netherlands were liberated, you'd think Napoleon might have seen the writing on the wall. But he was Napoleon, and so instead, he prepared to keep fighting. As attitudes in Paris were already beginning to turn against him, he called up more conscripts to defend the exhausted nation. As for the Allies, they weren't sure exactly what they were aiming for here. A few peace offers were floated that may have let Napoleon keep his position, but the British kept throwing around even more money, and eventually, they all agreed that the ultimate aim was the deposition of Napoleon entirely. And so, Napoleon embarked on one of his most famous campaigns to defend the homeland. He was completely outnumbered, but the Allied armies had split up and spread out. His army was so small that he could move at lightning speed, and he used this to his advantage. In the famous 6 Days campaign against Prussian General Blücher, he attacked from all directions and defeated Blücher's forces 4 times, only suffering a tenth of the casualties he inflicted. Even with his back completely to the wall, Napoleon was still Napoleon. Then he turned south to take on Schwarzenberg's army of Bohemia and enjoyed even more victories. However, Napoleon's problem was that he couldn't be everywhere at once, and wherever he wasn't, the Allies continued to push towards Paris. He made one last-ditch attempt at moving in behind the enemy lines and cutting off their communications, but Paris was in disarray, and the people were sick of war.
Even though he was still attacking, I respect him because he had different strategies of attacking.
Yeah.
Because he, like you say, he split the double team, try to come around them, D-Wade, I think he's learning, but it's too late, bro.
Yeah,
it's too late.
It's about to be over pretty soon.
It's too late, son.
Ambitious and slightly treacherous politician sent the Allied armies a letter basically saying, "Hey guys, come on in." And so, they did. The city's defenders surrendered, and as the Allied leaders entered Paris, the people cheered them as bringers of peace. Paris had fallen. Quick, marshals, gather your men. We're gonna launch an assault on Paris. Where are my marshals? They all left and told me to give you this note. Napoleon's realized what he hadn't. It was over, and they insisted all that was left now, for the good of France, was for him to abdicate. And without the support of his army, Napoleon had no choice. He hoped his son could take his place, but it was decided instead to restore the old Bourbon monarchy. Old King Louis XVI's brother would become the King of France. It was almost like the French Revolution had never even happened. But what will we do with Napoleon? We can't have a hyperactive 44-year-old menace running around reigniting revolutionary ideals and plotting his return. Well, why don't we send him, I don't know. There, the location chosen for Napoleon's exile was the small island of Elba, just off the coast of Italy. Napoleon was to rule over the island, and even got to keep the title Emperor of Elba. The Allies must have been in stitches when they came up with that. When he learned what his fate was to be, he drank the poison he had been keeping around his neck. But it had gone out of date, so instead of a quick and painless death, he got a painful stummy-wummy instead. Before he...
Damn!
Imagine you drink poison, you think you're about to die.
Hey, you wake up, you got diarrhea. Damn! Yo, that's tough.
This is hell? Nope.
The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Well, no pun intended, because he was not tall, but he was big in the sense of, I guess, as an emperor, as a personality. And it was a hard fall for him, man. It's tough.
It is tough. He tried to kill himself at 44.
Yeah, you got a lot of life to live. You probably 40 more years, probably. 30, 40 more years.
Nah, I think they used to live long. I mean...
No. The life expectancy is higher now.
Really? Compared to back in the day?
Hell yeah. You crazy?
Is it because of wars? Or is it because of...
No, because nutrition.
Oh, okay.
Like, we understand, like...
You're right.
Yeah, fitness and shit.
Damn.
France, he addressed his oldest and closest guard one last time, making an emotional speech that ended with him kissing their flag. And off he went to exile. The deal that was given to him was actually quite generous. His family were given titles, he was to receive a state pension from France, and he was able to come and meet the famed emperor. And he ruled over Elba well, improving infrastructure and introducing many legal and social reforms aimed at improving life on the island. Hey Napoleon, just coming in to check on how it's all going. Holy smokes! But it wasn't all good. For one thing, he learned of the death of his first wife Josephine and was deeply saddened. He was forbidden from seeing his son and current wife, and in Austria, Emperor Francis had ordered a local count to seduce her so she would forget about Napoleon. Then, the new King Louis XVIII refused to give Napoleon his agreed pension. He was under constant threat of assassination, and there were even rumors that the Allies were thinking of relocating him somewhere even more remote. But the biggest problem was that Napoleon was once the master of Europe. He had lived a thrilling life of adventure, fame, and glory. Now, he found himself on a tiny island in the Mediterranean, and he was bored. Wouldn't it be nice if he could somehow return to France and reclaim his throne? Hey Napoleon, want to go back to France and reclaim your throne? I would, Pierre. But how? Well, I was thinking we could just take this boat. Will that work? Surprisingly, yes. Pierre, remember when I told you no one would ever kiss you? Yes, sire. Well, pucker up, boyo. Yeah. When Napoleon left Elba, it wasn't really the daring escape you might think. He basically had kind of a leaving ceremony, hopped on a ship, and sailed back to France. He brought with him an army of about 1,000 men, and he began his journey to Paris. However, in Paris, there was now a new king, and at first, the people largely accepted him because the last few years of war under Napoleon had brought immense death and economic suffering. That's right, the king is back, baby. Divine right to rule. Don't worry, everyone. I know the economy is kaput, but I and my courtiers will withdraw into this palace, and we will definitely work as hard as we can to fix everything.
That was sports car?
Yeah. Hey, you see the people who were confused?
Oh yeah, that's why we got rid of the king. As the Bourbon monarchy began to look more and more like a return to the past, and the returning nobility seemed hellbent on regaining their lost privileges, the people weren't too happy. And so, Napoleon hoped that his glorious return would be met with jubilation. In
Wow.
the end, the reaction was...
Before they go on, what do you think that his return is going to be met with?
I think they're going to accept him back because shit is still fucked up.
I think they're going to actually like the guy, King Louis.
Hmm?
I think they're going to like King Louis more. Like, oh, God, this son of a bitch is back. Where's King Louis? Love you. Sorry.
Nah.
A little mixed, but many were happy to see their old emperor. Your Majesty, it seems that Napoleon is back and marching this way with 1,000 men. That guy? No problem. I have hundreds of thousands of men. Send them to arrest him. Your Majesty, it seems the thousands of men we sent to arrest Napoleon have all joined his side.
Wow.
Well, I'm off to Belgium. If you ever need a king again, be sure to let me know. As Napoleon continued his journey, the king had sent battalions of men to stop him, but they largely comprised of Napoleon's old soldiers, many unhappy with King Louis's military reforms. And so, when ordered to arrest him, they simply couldn't do it. In one famous incident, the troops began to cry out, "Long live the Emperor." When Napoleon reached Paris, with King Louis having fled, he entered unopposed to reclaim his throne. Napoleon was back from the dead. Okay everyone, now that we've finally gotten rid of that guy, let's try to make sure something like this can never happen again. What's that doing there? Hey fellow monarchs!
Wow.
This time, Napoleon promised he would be a mucho good boy and not start any wars.
promise.
But the Allied leaders were having none of it. They declared Napoleon an outlaw and the illegitimate ruler of France. Then they declared war, not on France, but on Napoleon himself. And when you have multiple empires declaring war on you as an individual, that's how you know you're a very naughty boy. The Allied powers began making plans to combine their forces and once again invade France. The most immediate threat to Napoleon were the British and Prussians hanging out in nearby Belgium.
Is this guy
If
for
Napoleon
real?
could knock them out quickly, maybe he could force the Allies to negotiate, and maybe he could hold on to his power. Together, the two armies to the north outnumbered him, so he made a plan to divide them and take them on separately. Historians debate how much of a chance Napoleon had here, but this same strategy of dividing and conquering had worked for him multiple times. He marched north with 125,000 men and took on the Allies in a number of initial engagements, defeating the Prussians before turning to take on the British. But to Napoleon's dismay, miscommunication and hesitation among his marshals allowed both enemy armies to retreat, and crucially, rather than fleeing east, the Prussians moved north, where they could remain in contact with the British. Napoleon sent a force to hold off the Prussians as he moved in on the British, now holding a defensive position at Waterloo. Prussian General Blücher sent word that he would come to Wellington's aid if he could just hold off the French for long enough. Napoleon had to defeat Wellington before the Prussian army could arrive in force, and it was close. The British held the high ground and a number of key defensive buildings across the battlefield. After waiting some hours he didn't have for the ground to dry, Napoleon sent men to assault the Hougoumont farm, but the British-German garrison there held out. French Marshal Ney launched a number of miscalculated cavalry charges at the British lines. The British formed defensive square formations, and they tore the French cavalry to shreds, while one guy chose the absolute worst time to go on a bender. The French did manage to capture a farmhouse directly in front of the British line, and from there, they unleashed artillery hellfire on the British square formations. And as Napoleon sent his Imperial Guard in to finish the British off, a nervous Wellington knew his lines were at breaking point. But the Prussians had earlier begun to arrive, and now they were arriving in large numbers. And after the British held out and sent the French Imperial Guard running, the French lines panicked, fearing they had been encircled, and they began to flee. The Battle of Waterloo was an Allied victory. And with that, Napoleon's hopes of returning to glory were vanquished. He knew he was defeated. He went to the British and said, "Can I please have a house near London?" And the British replied, "No." Instead, to make sure Napoleon was put away once and for all, they sent him to one of the most isolated and remote places they could think of. A tiny island in the Atlantic Ocean, St. Helena.
How come they just want to kill him?
That's what I'm just about to say. Bro, just kill this guy, bro. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
You know he gonna
kill this dude, back, man. Like, yeah, like, I fuck with Napoleon's grind and all that, and his dedication, and how passionate he is about Europe and France and shit like that. But bro, too much people are dying, bro.
And he's killing your men. Like,
yeah.
Why are you talking to this man, son?
You gotta kill this guy, man. St. Helena. That's next to Africa. We should go there one day.
A deeply isolated and depressed Emperor Napoleon would live the remaining years of his life. His house was a wooden bungalow, not exactly on par with the Tuileries Palace. Much to his frustration, his captors referred to him as General, rather than calling him Emperor. His mail was censored, his visitors were vetted. There was almost no way he could escape such an isolated island. But just to be sure, he was guarded by 2,000 British soldiers and 2 ships that circled the island 24 hours a day. He had once been the most powerful man alive, and images of the victorious Napoleon depict a strong leader, hand firmly in jacket. Depictions of Napoleon on St. Helena show a disheveled old man, hand firmly in pants. He had lost everything. And by the way, he was only 46, so maybe it's about time you know what? You're doing all right, kid. Napoleon fought one last battle while on the island. The battle for his reputation. He spent hours writing his memoirs, espousing his achievements, recording his greatness, and turning himself and his story into a phenomenal legend. And in this battle, he certainly succeeded. His mark on history cannot be denied. After his defeat, the European monarchs had got to work restoring Europe to its traditional balance and reasserting their dominance. But after Napoleon had spread the influence of the French Revolution, these returning monarchs would have a difficult time regaining their absolute control. France returned to the rule of the Bourbons, but it would go on to stage another revolution, and then another one. Reaction to Napoleon's rule in places like Germany and Italy propelled forward the ideas and feelings of modern unity and nationalism, and his Napoleonic code still remains the basis of law in various modern countries. The modern world owes a lot to Napoleon's legacy. He remains statistically possibly the greatest military general in history, and his revolutionary military tactics changed the face of warfare. He was the last truly great leader to both lead his armies in battle while retaining total political control over a vast empire. There's still hope for Joe Biden, but the man remains somewhat of an enigma, and we still aren't sure exactly what to make of him in some regards. Was he the champion of the French Revolution, spreading equality wherever he went, or did he betray it by making himself an absolute monarch and restricting certain liberties? Was he an ambitious and aggressive conqueror, hell-bent on bringing Europe to its knees? Or was he simply defending himself against an aggressive Europe, hell-bent on reducing his power? Some things will continue to be debated. Napoleon died at the age of 51, officially of stomach cancer, but some believe he...
See what I'm saying?
You're right.
Crazy.
...had been poisoned. The British buried him in a tin coffin, inside a mahogany coffin, inside a lead coffin, inside another mahogany coffin. I guess this time, they wanted to make sure he stayed where they put him. In 1840, his remains were moved to Paris, where they now rest under the dome of Les Invalides. The man from humble origins, with huge ambition, ruthless determination, immaculate skill on the battlefield, and a hefty dose of luck, who was determined to make his mark on history, did just that. There is no immortality, he said, but the memory that is left in the minds of men. And in that sense, Napoleon knew he would live on forever. Oh, and to reiterate, he was definitely average height for the time.
That was a nice way to end it.
I love that.
Yeah, this was dope, man. This was my second favorite, man.
What was your first?
Hitler. Hitler was definitely my favorite.
Okay, I was behind the camera at that time, so
yeah, but Hitler was definitely my favorite. This is definitely my second favorite. This was dope, man. I knew Napoleon was a polarizing figure, but I didn't know how polarizing he actually was. So this was definitely informative for me, and you know, this is dope. I love this shit.
Yeah, I didn't know how. I knew like the what is it called, the Napoleon syndrome, something like that.
Oh,
it was like we sure you act bigger than what you are. Like I knew that, but I didn't know much about him because once again,
Napoleon complex.
Once again, I did not pay attention to fucking social studies and history, so it was good to be reminded of all the shit that he did and the impact that he had over Europe. I wonder if we will ever have a leader like him again. That's that dominant.
Hopefully not.
Putin?
Nah, chill.
Putin?
If Putin never see this, bro, it's just jokes, bro.
Just jokes?
It's jokes. I don't know how powerful these
We ain't in Europe though.
Huh?
We ain't in Europe. What they gotta do with us?
I'm not with it, bro.
You not with it?
Yeah, I'm not trying to disrespect nobody's leaders.
I think they got too many treaties today for that to happen.
You mean Russia? Oh, wait, Russia's in Europe, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It is?
Yeah. It's in Europe.
Oh, man. Ignore that.
What, you thought that shit was in North America?
No. I forgot that Russia was a...
Or Russia was in Asia or Europe?
No, I forgot Russia. Because Russia's so fucking big that a part of me is like, Russia's a continent, but it's not. Yeah. But... Bro, y'all see me sipping, bro. So I already know Europe is a continent and Russia's in Europe. But
well, you know not to trust his opinion. So
yeah. So holla at your boys out, man.
Gang.